jail may be a necessary punishment. That is what Judge Juan Merchan told Donald Trump today, and he said it in writing. The trial of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, defendant, began as trial days frequently begin, with what the judge called some housekeeping matters. One of them was trying, quote, to work something out with the sound system, end quote, to make it work better. Another was a good news, bad news item for Donald Trump. The judge said because the trial is proceeding ahead of schedule, the judge will cancel the court session scheduled for Friday, May 17th. Quote, so Mr. Trump can certainly attend that date, attend his son's graduation. The bad news for Donald Trump is he might now actually have to go to his son's high school graduation. And then, as the third housekeeping item on the judge's mind, he used less than a minute of court time to announce his finding that Donald Trump is indeed guilty of contempt of court. The judge said, quote, the court finds that the people have met their burden of proof and demonstrated contempt. Mr. Trump is fined $1,000 on each. I am handing down a written decision, copies for both sides. The details of the decision are in the written decision. And that was that in the courtroom. The judge then brought in the jury. In the 7 pages describing Donald Trump's violations of the judge's order forbidding him to make comments about witnesses and jurors, the judge decided that Donald Trump violated his order 9 times and fined Donald Trump the maximum fine of $1,000 for each of those violations. The judge noted the inadequacy of the fines in Donald Trump's case. The judge wrote, the judiciary law does not vest the court with authority to craft an appropriate punishment when a $1,000 fine will not achieve the intended purpose. While $1,000 may suffice in most instances to protect the dignity of the judicial system, to compel respect for its mandates, and to punish the offender for disobeying a court order, it unfortunately will not achieve the desired result in those instances where the contemnor can easily afford such a fine. In those circumstances, it would be preferable if the court could impose a fine more commensurate with the wealth of the contemnor. In some cases, that might be a $2,500 fine. In other cases, it might be a fine of $150,000. Because this court is not cloaked with such discretion, it must therefore consider whether in some instances jail may be a necessary punishment. Therefore, defendant is hereby warned that the court will not tolerate continued willful violations of its lawful order, and that if necessary and appropriate under the circumstances, it will impose an incarceratory punishment. When the trial resumes on Thursday, the first order of business is a hearing on 4 more alleged violations of the judge's gag order against Donald Trump. The worst of those violations is Donald Trump saying in an interview last Monday, quote, that jury was picked so fast, 95% Democrats, the area's mostly all Democrat. You think of it as just a purely Democratic area. It's a very unfair situation, that I can tell you. Donald Trump is under an order to not say a word about the jury, not a word. So it doesn't actually matter that what he said about the jury is a lie. Donald Trump has no idea how many Democrats are on that jury or how many Republicans might be on that jury. But we do know that Donald Trump is going to be fined $1,000 for saying that. And that what we don't know yet is how many more of these violations will it take for the judge to consider jail a necessary punishment. 30 days is the maximum sentence the judge can issue for any one of these violations. If Donald Trump were sentenced to any time in jail, he would be like many of the criminal defendants who report for their trials every day in that same courthouse while living in jail on Rikers Island across the water from LaGuardia Airport. And so Donald Trump has never been closer to spending a night in jail than he is right now. The most important testimony of the day was given by the man who said, I have a blockbuster Trump story. Keith Davidson was Stormy Daniels' first lawyer, and before that, he was Karen McDougal's first lawyer. And it was in his role as Karen McDougal's first lawyer that he texted the editor of the National Enquirer, Dylan Howard, the line, "I have a blockbuster Trump story." Prosecutor Joshua Steinglass, who has possession of the texts, asked witness Keith Davidson to read that text that he sent to Dylan Howard. "I have a blockbuster Trump story." Question, what did you mean by that? Answer, sort of an entree or a teaser to Dylan to let him know that I had perhaps an opportunity for him. Question, and what was the, generally speaking, and certainly without revealing client confidences, what was the opportunity about which you were contacting him? Answer, regarding the interaction between Karen McDougal and Donald Trump. Question, what did Mr. Howard say, if anything, in response? Answer, talk first thing, I will get you more than anyone for it, you know why. Question, what do you understand talk first thing to mean? Answer, that he would call me in the morning. Question, what did you understand the rest of the text to mean? Answer, that I don't know if I had a clear understanding at that time, but I knew that Dylan's boss, David Pecker, and Mr. Trump were longtime friends and had a former business relationship, that Mr. Pecker published Trump Magazine, and that at the time AMI had announced, they hadn't announced explicitly, at least implied, that they had endorsed Mr. Trump's candidacy. That's why Karen McDougal's lawyer believed National Enquirer would pay for her story to help Donald Trump's candidacy. That was the reason. Dylan Howard's reply was, talk first thing, I will get you more than anyone for it, you know why. And the why in Keith Davidson's answer was Mr. Trump's candidacy. The prosecutor asked Keith Davidson to read more texts. From Dylan, did he cheat on Melania? Question, who did you understand he to be referring to? Answer, Donald Trump. Question, okay, next test. From whom? From Dylan. Okay, do you know if the affair was during his marriage to Melania? Question again, do you understand his to be a reference to Donald Trump? Answer, yes. And how did you respond to this text? Answer, I really cannot say yet, sorry. Question, is that because you didn't know or because you weren't prepared to discuss the details of that point? Answer, it was because it was the latter, because I was not prepared to discuss the details at that point. Keith Davidson then entered negotiations with the National Enquirer to sell Karen McDougal's story to the National Enquirer. Keith Davidson arranged a meeting for Karen McDougal with Dylan Howard in Keith Davidson's office in California. Question, can you tell us the substance of what Ms. McDougal said about the nature of her interactions with Mr. Trump during this meeting? Answer, I can summarize it. Question, that's fine. Answer, Ms. McDougal alleged that she had had a romantic affair with Donald Trump for some years prior. Question, when you say romantic, does that include sexual? Answer, that's what she expressed. That was the blockbuster story that was for sale to the National Enquirer. Karen McDougal was a Playboy magazine model who in 1998 was Playmate of the Year. Karen McDougal has said in interviews that she was in love with Donald Trump and she did not want her story about Donald Trump to be made public. But Keith Davidson was able to use that story as leverage to use the National Enquirer to pay his client, Karen McDougal, $150,000 to work for the National Enquirer or its parent company by occasionally maybe writing articles for them. The prosecution alleges that this was a classic example of the so-called catch and kill scheme that the jury has already heard about in David Pecker's testimony, which revealed the secret plan for the National Enquirer to kill all negative stories about candidate Donald Trump, purchase them if necessary, and to highlight and even invent negative stories about Donald Trump's campaign opponents. Karen McDougal was not the last blockbuster Trump story that Keith Davidson worked on. The next one was the Stormy Daniels story. The prosecutor asked Keith Davidson what the release of the Access Hollywood video of Donald Trump bragging about sexual assault meant for the Stormy Daniels story and the value of it. Question, what impact, if any, did the release of the Access Hollywood tape have on interest in Stormy Daniels' story so far as you were aware? Answer, so far as I'm aware, it had tremendous influence. Question, can you explain that a little bit to the jury, please? Answer, before Access Hollywood tape, there was very little, if any, interest from what I understand. It wasn't until Access Hollywood that interest sort of reached a crescendo. Keith Davidson was then asked about his texts after the Access Hollywood story broke. Question, who sent the first text in this chain? It's from me. And question, what did you say? Answer, Trump is effed. Question, you wrote out the whole word effed in the text. Answer, I did. Question, what prompted you to say that Trump was effed? Answer, the Access Hollywood tape. Question, how did Dylan Howard respond? Answer, he responded with wave the white flag, it's over, people, exclamation point. Question, and how did you interpret that? Answer, I think he was seconding my opinion. Question, based on the Access Hollywood tape? Answer, yes. Eventually, the National Enquirer backed out of the deal, and Keith Davidson had to negotiate directly with Michael Cohen for the hush money payments that were paid directly to Stormy Daniels. When they were struggling to finalize the deal and Michael Cohen was not ready to make the payments, Davidson remembered Cohen saying, well, goddammit, what do you expect me to do? My guy is in 5 effing states today, or 3 or 4 or 5 different states today. There is nothing I can do. I am doing everything I can. Question, when he said that his guy was in a certain number of states, who did you understand his guy to be making reference to? Answer, Donald Trump.